Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Ben.
And this is Blake.
And you are listening to episode 5 of the Nothing New podcast. We are a podcast that emphasizes how doing the small things will help you turn the corner with your health, your business, your life, anything else that you might need assistance with.
Boom.
All right. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm going to start today off with a question. Blake, I want an answer from you. And the question is, what comes to mind when I say the word curiosity?
I would describe it as just learning, trying to learn something about a topic or just being nosy. Before we started this, I thought it was a very simple term until we started doing some research on this. But what did you originally?
Man, I was kind of with you on that. Same thing. And the more I got into it, just one thing kind of kept popping back into my mind, and it was evolution. And it was like the evolution of self, because if you're not curious, how do you grow? How do you change? How do you improve? So it was pretty much curiosity really equated to evolution for me.
All right.
So I think there's a quote in there that really does a little bit better job, probably explaining it better than both of us just did. And it goes like this. We feel most comfortable when things are certain, but we feel most alive when they aren't. So something to think about, and kind of as we work through this podcast as to what role curiosity plays in our lives, how alive we feel, and if we're kind of just settling in. So you had a really good example about how curiosity kind of follows you around in a very basic thing most of us do every day.
Well, we kind of mentioned bringing up the topic of, when it comes to being curious, we have so much stuff that we can just go onto the computer and look up information. We can go to YouTube and find videos of how to do things. And my argument when we were talking was, is it better to go to YouTube and know that this stuff is always there? Or is it better to, maybe have something written down and actually learning it? So my reasoning behind that was coffee. And I'm a big coffee fan. I know most of the people we work with are big coffee fans. And people are going to be thinking, listening right now are going to be like, coffee, why? That's easy to make. I put it in a coffee pot.
Press one button.
Yeah. And, I've come to enjoy the experience of actually making what I call really good coffee. Now, if I go to YouTube and I type in French press coffee and how to make it, they're going to show me the exact steps that I want to take, right? Now, what if I was to get a book with no pictures, which I do have, this is why I'm giving the example, and it tells me on how to make that coffee? Do I think I'm going to do it the exact way that was shown on YouTube compared to the book? And my reasoning, this is why I think curiosity is such an interesting topic, and why I really believe that everybody needs to really dive deep into curiosity and grow and learn, is because when I read something, I might interpret it a little bit differently, right? We all interpret things different ways. And what ends up happening is we might interpret it one way, they might have meant something different, but whenever I made that coffee and it tasted delicious, that's the way I do things from now on. That's how I do it. Now, if I go to YouTube and I make it the way that they're showing me, it might not taste as good because it didn't give me a chance to explore and be curious about that.
I think it's cool because for me, growing up, when I first started drinking coffee, it was always the Mr. Coffee push button go, because it was easy, it was convenient. And now that everybody at work is all fancy and I have to try and keep up and drink decent coffee, I got a French press. I have no idea how to work the thing yet. I have it. And to your point, the curiosity aspect and my willingness to experiment a little bit with, different ratios of water to beans, all that stuff. You can find different flavors. You can find different flavor notes, all of these different things that come out of it. Versus if, say, I had just settled on what was the convenient way. Kind of going back to our quote is things were comfortable. I pushed the button, but now I actually have flavor to my coffee in the morning when I drink it. It might not be the mass quantity, but man, it tastes so much freaking better. better.
Well, and think about, whenever, just since we're on coffee topic, we're drinking something, think about when you drink the same thing over and over again, it gets boring. Right? Now, if I was to be super curious about it, I want to do it on my own. I want to make little bitty tweaks to it because that changes the flavor. Like you said, the grind setting changes the flavor of coffee. The type of water you use changes. There's so many different little things that you can change. But again, it comes back to that curiosity word and, doing your own thing a little bit, being curious about that topic, whatever you're trying to learn.
Yeah, and you think of those guys that really get real deep into it. They have a whole journal that they keep, and it's like, okay, I use this ratio of water to beans. I use this kind of water. Is this kind of bean. I did this, and I got this flavor note. If I change my grind setting by this much, or if I change my water ratio by this much, totally different thing. So basically, we're trying to use this simple thing that a lot of us do every day by making coffee to say that there's probably a better way out there for the most of the things you're doing, but how willing are you to go out and try and find that way? So, yeah. And just another quick example that I like to think of. I love Steve Branson. I love how he's so out there and is willing to try different things. It's like, think about the first time. Richard Branson. Sorry. Steve, his brother. His brother Steve.
Richard, think about the first time that he said, hey, you know what, guys? We're going to fly people to space. Think about the comments and the reaction that he first got whenever he first said that. Mm-hmm. But again, he was curious about it. And that guy, whenever he's curious about something, he's like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. That's a... Steve Branson is you said Steve Branson. He's a hero to all of us everywhere, the fictional creature that he is. So that's kind of a good example, two good examples, coffee and then Steve. So I think kind of opening a big discussion here, and really I want you guys to think about this as I ask it, is what is curiosity? What role does it play? How prevalent is it? How willing are you to be open to it? What do you think curiosity really is?
I mean, after doing all this research and talking it out with you, I would have to say it's a fuel for development.
That's good.
What do you think? Yeah,
that's pretty solid.
It's a simple way to put it, but I think it leads to so many different directions, and again, it causes you to be curious.
And they say it killed the cat, but I don't really know if that's true. That was a terrible segue. No, I think it's like curiosity killed the cat, and I think it's one of those cliche sayings that are out there, follow us around, and basically saying that you should be okay where you're at. And I think to understand curiosity and its role everywhere, I really look at an image that comes to mind for me is the Google search bar. I know we kind of talked about that briefly, but for me, that's the ultimate world of curiosity because I can go in there and I can type in who is Steve Branson? I can type that in and I can learn all of these things of what he has not done. But
God, that was bad.
It's going to follow you. So I think it's something that it is that evolution. It is that fuel. It is something that helps us grow and improve. And that day that you stop, that day that you really could care less about moving forward and progressing is the day that you kind of start dying. And that sounds cliche and dumb and whatever it is, but I truly believe that. If you're not willing to learn, you're not really willing to live.
I like it. And I mean, it helps you, it helps people become persistent. It helps us problem solve.
Oh, that's key. Yeah. I mean, think about it. It's like all of these things out there. If Edison and all these other people, they didn't care about what makes electricity work. How do we turn on the light? We probably still have electricity, but it would have come years later. If the Wright brothers, if they weren't curious about flight, the airplane might have come along much later. And there's these things that they help us learn. They help us, like you said, persevere, and they help us solve problems.
It helps us see opportunities where, that's another key thing is just the opportunity side of things. When, if you leave yourself curious and you're open, you allow things to come in, you're open to other people, you might see an opportunity that some other people don't see, but if you're not open, then you're going to allow opportunities to pass you by, basically.
I think a very practical version of curiosity is travel. You think about that because, they talk about, one of the best ways to grow as a person is to travel and to see the world and to see different places. And I think about this, it's my travels used to be going to Ohio every year, then really looking at it, I was in the Amish community, different places, different groups, different cities. And like for yourself, your girlfriend is from Sweden, flying up to Sweden, being a part of different cultures, just got back from Ireland about a month ago. And it's like the level in which I have grown from experiencing these different people, these different languages, dialects, foods, cultures, it's helped me just become something totally different than if I'm the same guy that lived in the same town doing the same thing.
It's a great point. And I will say, with the whole Sweden side of things is until I met her, I never had, there's no reason for me to ever want to go to Sweden. I mean, just not really on my bucket list. But now that I've done that and I've experienced that, I'll tell you, I've become more curious about the Swedish culture than ever. And it's such an interesting thing. And that's, a lot of people don't even understand like what else is out there. But it's because they've become so comfortable where they are doing the same stuff every single day, making the same breakfast every day, going to work, sitting at a desk all day, going home, making dinner, watching Netflix, and we're done.
Yeah. And whereas, the argument that you're probably thinking of is like, well, it's convenient to do these things. It's quicker. It saves me time. It does. But ultimately, you don't get to branch out. You don't see these new opportunities like Blake mentioned earlier. And then you're not able to really grow. You're that same person. You're the same dude that played high school football that talks about high school football all the time, which I think we've referenced a few times in this podcast.
So, okay, then going off of that, why do you think, I think this is a big question that we have and that most people will have is what happens? Why does it start to dwindle?
Right. And there's so many reasons. I know you have a big one. I'll let you hit that one. But I think, I have a 21-month-old little girl right now, and to see how she sees the world is incredible because she wants to know everything. She asks questions. She wants to go do things. She wants to go outside. She wants to experience things. And it makes me think of myself. And it's like, when I go home, I want to stay home. I don't really want to go out sometimes. I don't want to do things. I don't want to go out and experience things. And I wonder, like, what changed when I was that age to where I'm at now? And so for me, I look at one factor is parenting. And because I'm in the role now, I can see it and say that, as a parent, you get asked a bunch of questions by your child. And, why is the sky blue? Why does this happen? Where is this going? And we don't really know the answers. And so we kind of discourage it sometimes. Like, well, stop asking questions and you don't need to know. And I think that can be very detrimental. Granted, you want to have peace and quiet. Like, you want to.
Right.
But I think we still have to be able to kind of encourage the little explorers that we have in our homes and encourage them to be curious about this world, because if we crush that for them, we're dream killers. That's a kind of a way I look at it, especially as I'm saying this now. All the times I've told my daughter no, it kind of makes me think back and be like, well, crap, like what am I doing? What have I taught her? I'm encouraging her to not care about learning, which for me, that's it's a big deal. But I know you have a really good thing.
Yeah, I think partly the reason is because of our education system. And I just think about, these kids are told you have to be at school at a certain time. You have to be here at 8:00 in the morning. They sit down all day. They might get a PE class. They might not, which is a whole nother issue. But, they're learning the same stuff over and over again just for this standardized testing.
Right.
And, I think the schooling system it hasn't started changing yet, but I think people are starting to see that there is a better route that we could go. And it's allowing our kids more to be curious. And I kind of told you an example of this was in college at the time. We had a class, and our whole class, we would meet at a new company every single week. And I'm going to give the example. It was a marketing class. And so one of the days we went to a grocery store and we saw on how they, place what they want sold on the, middle level, eye level stuff. And so, because that we were able to go in and get that experience, I think that caused everyone to learn more. That's why whenever you walk up to the cash register, all the candy's low for the little kids.
Oh, heck yeah.
Right. And it's hard to tell your child no. But again, I mean, could I have learned that sitting down at a desk? Yes, I could have, but I guarantee you that has stuck with me a lot more because I got to actually experience that and be curious a little bit because we were able to, to ask all these questions to the store manager.
It's more practical too. It's to do that kind of stuff and to have like he's mentioned, the experience versus this is how you're going to take this standardized test. You got to find this prefix. You need to do this. You need to do the math this way to make sure you have the best grades so you can go to college and you can do that whole dream scenario. And really, the education system can definitely dampen that.
And I'll tell you, and I feel sorry for the teachers because
definitely.
It's their job to get these kids to make pass these standardized tests. So it's like, how are they able to bring curiosity out into their kids? It's a tough subject, and I think it needs to have a lot of work. But I think that's one reason why it starts to dwindle off as we start to age.
And I think too, it's like you mentioned the teaching aspect of it is when teachers, if they choose to be a teacher, they dream about impacting a kid's life. And granted, they have opportunities to do it. But whenever you get to a school district and they tell you we need this much money from the state to do these things, it kind of kills off your willingness to teach and your willingness to do certain things, and it kind of puts that fire out in you.
Yep.
So I think the education system plays a role, parenting, and I think ultimately, like with most things, fear. Because it's hard to step out. It's hard, if like this morning, a coworker was showing me how to make French press coffee a little bit more efficiently, and if I was too afraid to ask him the specifics, man, I would have been in a world of hurt. And I imagine we all kind of go through that every day.
Well, again, Mr. Branson, let's bring him back up with the whole Galactic Virgin Galactic company. It's if he walked in there, told these people this crazy idea, and they all laughed in his face, shut him down. He could have easily walked out the door and been like, scratch that idea. Mm-hmm. It's fear is everywhere, and I think it's just something that we all have to accept and stay curious and work past.
I agree. I think it's recognize that fear is going to exist, and the moment that we stop caring about it and stop placing so much value, the more time and energy we have to put into being curious and learning about this world that we have around us. So, we talked about why we feel like curiosity is dwindling. What are a few ways that we can rekindle that passion for learning, passion for growing? What do you got?
Well, I would say just don't really be afraid to say I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I mean I say it all the time. But again, if I don't know something and I truly find interest in that, then guess what I'm going to go do? I'm going to go either buy a book on it, look it up on the lovely internet. But I'm going to start learning about that topic that I want to know. But I feel like a lot of people are they don't even want to let people know that they might not know something.
Why be vulnerable?
Yeah, and they'll just immediately, they could change the topic or act like they know.
Yeah.
And tell you a bold-faced lie.
Yeah, and I think we experienced this the other day at the hospital. My wife asked a nurse a question, and she kind of looked around nervously and then gave us this response that you knew she didn't know what she was talking about, but instead of saying, let me go ask a doctor, I don't know, or let me find out, she gave us this answer that made no sense, which didn't help us.
That actually doesn't help your connection with that person either.
Exactly.
We have to be okay with saying, I don't know. What about you, Ben? What do you think?
I think kind of being intentional, setting aside the time to do these things, to look things up, to learn, to read books that are maybe not what you think, like they don't fit into your learning style, they don't fit into your breadth of interest, whatever it is. Challenge yourself, get it out of the comfort zone, and just be intentional about it. Don't just keep doing the same things over and over again and expect to grow. I think intentionality with most things come into play, but especially here in that learning aspect.
And then lastly, I would say just asking questions. Right?
Oh, heck yeah.
And not being afraid to ask questions.
Right.
And you can go back to all the way back to school days of where your teacher might have said something or you read something and you've already raised your hand 4 times. Okay, maybe I'm not going to raise it for number 5, right? Because then I'm going to look like I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. Go back to the I don't know stuff. So I think, asking questions on everything that you can, and I think it needs to be seen as being something like that you're trying to learn.
And that might seem so common sense, and you'd be like, well, duh. But seriously, you can say that, but how many of you guys are out there really looking at it and saying like, all right, I'm going to ask questions to the people that are experts, or they might know, how often am I doing that? And truly answer that, because it's probably not as often as you think you are doing it. So that's, I mean, when we had this episode meeting, I guess you call it, we could have taken this thing a number of ways, and obviously like our minds are flowing with stuff, and it's a lot of information, but just make sure you took what we said, and if you want to know more, go look at that Google tab or ask somebody a question. But I think like, don't let the curiosity end after this episode stops playing, right? Yeah.
And I think, if you have any other ideas on ways to stay curious, let us know, because again, I'm willing to learn from you as well. Again, that term curiosity, when we first came up with, our topic, I don't think we realized on how big we could have made this topic.
Right.
We want to keep everything, condensed as much as possible. So we had to kind of throw some things out, but it's a big word. And, if you have any comments that you would like, please comment with us, interact with us, because we're looking to interact with everyone.
Yeah. So stay curious, my friends.
Very nice.
Yeah, I just threw that out there. Curious George, whatever your name is, you can throw that in there as well. But continue to interact. We love that. We want to hear from you guys. Like Blake said, a review on iTunes would be spectacular. If you want to give us one, 5 stars only.
5-star.
And then let us know what you like about the podcast and what things we could improve to make it better for you. So it's all about the experience. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot else to say.
That's it.
Awesome. So stay curious out there. Have a good rest of your week, and we will see you guys later.
Thanks, guys.
#2Dragons.